Okay, let's think about this for a second. What if one woman, just one, held the fate of two massive civilizations in her hands? She didn't just sit on a throne. She commanded armies, she went toe-to-toe with emperors, and in the process, she built a legend that has echoed for thousands of years. We're talking, of course, about Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt and the queen who dared to take on Rome itself. So right away, we're hit with this incredibly dramatic image. And you have to remember who wrote this: the Romans, her enemies. They painted her as this tragic figure, pale with death, defeated, doomed. And wow, is that a powerful image or what? It's the one that has stuck with her for over 2,000 years. It's the legend we all think we know.
But that's the real question we have to ask, isn't it? Who was the actual woman behind this myth? A myth written by the very people who conquered her. You know the saying, the victors write history. Well, if that's true, then to really get to know Cleopatra, we've got to peel back all those layers of Roman propaganda and find the brilliant ruler who was just fighting tooth and nail for her kingdom's survival.
So, let's do that. To really get a handle on why she made the choices she did, we have to try and see the world as she saw it. And let me tell you, the picture wasn't pretty. Cleopatra inherited this kingdom with an incredible history, sure, but it was also teetering right on the brink of total collapse.
Okay, so just look at this breakdown. It really shows you the impossible situation she was in. Internally, Egypt was a mess, full of factions and schemes. Externally, it was basically just a political football for Rome, getting kicked around by these powerful men. But here's the thing, look at her actions. She didn't just sit back and panic. No, she got to work. She centralized power, she launched a massive census to make taxes fairer, and she even took on the super powerful temple priests by cutting their tax breaks. And maybe the most brilliant move of all? She presented herself as the living goddess Isis, creating this deep, personal connection with her own people.
And here's the thing, she absolutely had the skills to back up these incredibly bold moves. I mean, get this, her family, the Ptolemies, were Greek. They had ruled Egypt for centuries, but she was the first one in her entire dynasty to actually bother learning the Egyptian language. Think about that for a second. On top of that, all the sources tell us she was highly educated, an amazing communicator, a master of politics. Oh, and she could command her own naval fleet. So we're not just talking about a monarch. We're talking about a scholar, a politician, and a military leader, all rolled into one.
All right, so this is where we get to the most famous part of her story, right? Her relationships. With Egypt's survival literally hanging by a thread, Cleopatra had to use every single tool she had. And her greatest weapon? It turned out to be her genius for navigating the incredibly dangerous world of Roman politics.
And this right here, this is the core of her entire legacy, really. You have two totally different views of the same woman. On one hand, you've got the Roman myth, the femme fatale, this exotic seductress using her charms to wrap powerful men around her finger. But then you have the political reality, which is honestly so much more impressive. She was a master strategist who saw romance and alliances for what they were, vital tools of statecraft, all used to keep her kingdom safe.
So what is statecraft? It's just the skillful management of a country's affairs. And for Cleopatra, that meant her relationships with guys like Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Well, they weren't just love stories you'd see in a movie. They were calculated geopolitical maneuvers. By tying her fate to Rome's most powerful men, she got access to their resources, she kept the Roman legions out of her country, and she basically ensured Egypt's survival, while everyone else around them was getting swallowed up by the Roman Empire.
And listen to this quote from the historian Plutarch, because it is just so revealing. He says, when she went to meet Mark Antony, she didn't go when she was young and inexperienced. Nope, she waited. She went at the precise moment when her beauty was at its peak and her intellect was at its sharpest. This wasn't a date, this was a performance, a calculated strategic move designed for maximum political impact. Just brilliant.
But playing this kind of high-stakes game always comes at a cost. After Caesar was assassinated, her powerful alliance with Mark Antony put her on a collision course with his biggest rival. And this guy, Octavian, was a whole different animal. Cold, calculating, and absolutely determined to rule Rome all by himself, no matter who got in his way.
And this is where that myth we talked about at the beginning really gets started. To win his war against Antony, Octavian couldn't just fight him on the battlefield. He had to win a war for public opinion back in Rome. So he launched one of the most successful smear campaigns in history. He painted Cleopatra as this dangerous, exotic foreign queen who had seduced and corrupted a good Roman boy. He needed a villain to justify his war, and she was absolutely the perfect target. And don't just take my word for it. Modern historians have confirmed this was a 100% deliberate strategy. You see it right here. The myth of Cleopatra wasn't just random rumors, it was carefully crafted propaganda. Why? For political gain. It let Octavian turn what was really a Roman civil war into something that looked like a noble war against a foreign enemy. It was pure political genius. And you know what? The propaganda absolutely worked. It all came to a head in 31 BCE at the huge naval battle of Actium, and it was a complete disaster. When Cleopatra's squadron of 60 ships fled the battle, it caused total chaos. Antony's forces were crushed. It was over. Within a year, Octavian's legions marched into Egypt. And just like that, the Ptolemaic dynasty, which had lasted for centuries, was gone. The entire Hellenistic age was over, and Cleopatra, seeing no other way out, took her own life, in one final, famous act of defiance, denying Octavian the satisfaction of parading her through Roman chains.
39. That was her age, just 39 years old. And think about what she packed into that short life. She ruled a major kingdom for 22 of those years. She mastered a bunch of languages, she commanded armies and navies, and she went toe-to-toe with the most powerful men on the planet. Absolutely incredible.
So with her death, her dynasty was completely wiped out, which begs the question, how on earth has her story not only survived, but actually thrived for more than 2,000 years?
Well, the truth is, she's still a bit of an enigma. So who was the real Cleopatra? You could spend centuries debating it. Was she the immoral schemer the Romans made her out to be? Was she a brilliant strategist just trying to save her people? Or was she a ruthless leader doing whatever it took to survive in an incredibly violent world? You know, the most likely answer is that she was probably all of those things at once.
Yeah, her children didn't get to reign. Her son Caesarion was hunted down and executed by Octavian. Her bloodline was erased. But the story, that powerful, twisted, and totally captivating story that her enemies created, well, that took on a life of its own. It became this incredible myth that has fascinated everybody, artists, writers, historians, for generation after generation.
So why? Why are we still so fascinated by her? I think it's because she represents this ultimate challenge to the status quo. She was a woman who ruled in a world completely dominated by men. A queen from a fading kingdom who dared to take on an unstoppable empire. A leader whose sharpest weapon was her mind. And even when she lost, she refused to let her enemies define her final moments. She refused to be a stereotype.
Because in the end, her greatest accomplishment wasn't an empire that lasted. It was a story that did. A story that's still being told. Cleopatra wasn't just the last pharaoh of Egypt. She was, and I think she always will be, the queen of possibility.